right. Well, you know what? We'll just start off by welcoming you. Thank you so much for taking on the uh, the rent to own course for us. We'll, for those of you who I'm sure everybody knows who Alfonso is. Alfonso is with Jag Properties. Probably, I'm pretty certain you're the biggest rent to own company in Canada.
I don't know
Uh,
about that, but hopefully we're the best. So that's our goal, is that we are the best, and we're helping more people. So that's our goal.
yeah, and on top of that, you're a top-notch networker and connector and all around nice guy.
Oh, thanks, Rob. I could say the same for you.
Yeah, sometimes. You know, like I still remember that first time meeting you, sitting to your left at in Peter's, was it, what was
Oh
master
man,
investor class?
yes, that's right. Yep, Peter.
I think that's what they
Yeah,
used to call it.
yep.
And lo and behold, what, 8 years later, we're doing this.
Yeah, wild. It's wild. And that just goes to, again, just to the importance of networking, of the community, of the people that you surround yourself with, that you stay in contact with, you reach out to, you talk to. It just, it doesn't feel like 8 years. It more like feels like 8 minutes. But yeah, as you slowly, continue to build those relationships and grow that network and meet new people, you never know. You never know what could happen and what could come of it. So yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, Rob.
And you know what? I'll let you do a better job of introducing yourself than I could. If you could tell people a little bit about what you do, and
Sure.
just, we'll go from there. We'll take questions from anybody who wants to ask questions. I'm sure we'll get some on Facebook and we'll get some here.
Absolutely. Yeah. So really, again, just honored and very thankful and grateful to be here with the Thrive community today, and again, just growing that network. And like Rob said, we met in a real estate investing education class. I started taking the classes, it was back in 2012. So geez, 11 years ago that I had kind of piqued my interest. But before then, it was the traditional, I had, European parents. From my grandfather actually immigrated from Italy in the mid 60s. He came here to provide an opportunity, a better life for my grandmother and my mother. But, they were all hard workers. My grandfather was part of the laborers union. My grandmother worked, actually, of all places, a chocolate factory. So growing up, I got to enjoy a lot of chocolate. That was how I kept in good shape, and the shape was round. But yeah, and so and again, with my parents, that I always say that I had two sets of parents. My grandparents, that were primarily, they spoke Italian, and you know they were, really strong Italian community. So they didn't pick up the language or the Canadian culture as quick as my parents, that came here at a much younger age. So I got to kind of be raised the old school and the new school. But the new school at the time with my parents was still, go to school, get a good job, get a pension, retire. And my parents, God bless, they have been able to do that. My dad was a steel worker, originally, well, yeah, steel worker. I'm originally from Hamilton, Ontario. I'll always say it's the best city in the whole wide world, because that's where I'm from. But now living closer out to the Niagara region. And my mom, she worked for the Ontario government. She was an environmental officer, or I'd call her the pollution police. And they again were traditional. They worked at the factory, worked for the government, had safe, secure jobs, worked hard. They did I think, an amazing job. If I can be 100th of the parents that they were for my son, I'd be blessed and honored. They provided, a great life for myself and my sister. Um, and yeah, I grew up. I kind of saw that, there's some times where my dad was working shifts, or my mom wasn't able to attend, whether there was hockey games or karate, or different sports that I was involved in. So it was around grade 7 or grade 8. I remember it was like career day, and everybody got to bring their parents in, or a lot of people brought their parents in and explained what they did, right? Because you're starting high school. What do you want to be when you grow up? That was kind of that time frame. And I remember it was one of my good friends. His dad at the time was, he was a salesman, and he was a shoe salesman, and he brought Shaquille O'Neal's size, I think it was size 22 Reebok shoe, and that was his. And I was like, wow, and it's so vivid in my memory. It had like the white stripes, looked like a zebra. But he talked about that he worked, for a couple different companies, but he would, sell shoes to places like Foot Locker or other athletic stores and sell shoes, and that he got to travel around, go to different provinces, go to the US. He used to travel to Florida and California when it was, this time of the year in Canada. And something that, resonated with me, which was really, I don't know why at that age, but he said, the harder that I work, the more that I get paid. And I was like, well, that makes sense, right? Because I was used to my grandparents, my parents, they put in their hourly, they traded their time for money. They worked an hour, they got paid for an hour. They worked for 10, they got paid for 10. And he kind of made that comparison. He says, hey, the better that I do, the more that I make. And he showed us his award that he won for salesman of the year. And they said they don't give this out to the accountants. There's no accountants of the year, because they just, whether they do one spreadsheet or 10 spreadsheets. So for some reason that stuck with me. So anyhow, obviously, went to high school, and as I was looking at post-secondary education, I was like, okay, what do I want to do? So I went to a community college, Mohawk College, again in Hamilton. Took at the time it was called the sales and marketing course. It was right up my alley. The harder you work, the more connections that you make. And as Rob knows, I'm not a shy guy. I can strike up a conversation. I love meeting new people. That's why I'm so thrilled to be the part of this community, to get to meet more people and new connections. And I see some familiar names here on as well. But so yeah, after college, I started working actually as a door-to-door salesman. At the time, Bell had just demonopolized the home phone service. So Rogers was entering the home phone market, right? For those that are maybe of a younger vintage, those were the phones on the wall in your house. It was called a home phone. You could only call you at home. So yeah, I was knocking door to door, and I was saying, hey, I'm here from Rogers. You're interested in home phone service? You want to save some money on your home phone service, that kind of stuff. And I did really well. I really enjoyed it. Got to knock on people's doors again, and again, bringing up the cold weather. I was very creative, and got into like apartment buildings where, the doors were only like 10 feet apart, and you were inside all day. So you didn't have to be outside in the cold knocking door to door. So some creative strategies on door knocking, if anybody's interested. I have some tips and tricks. But so it was always around. So I had different, worked for, after the door-to-door sales, I worked for an international window coverings company. I also worked for, let's call it a hair replacement company. I don't want to give any plugs. That's a joke. I don't want to give any plugs for any hair replacement companies. But and at that time, I always loved making connections and interactions. But when I was working for the hair replacement company, one of the strategies, I guess, to sell the product was to really take advantage of people's emotions. They had lost their hair. They wanted to look better. And I remember in the training that we took, it was one part, then the trainer says, this is the part they should cry. And I sat back in my seat, dropped my pen. I'm like, we have to make people cry? I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's horrible, right? So it was perfect timing. Right around that time, that's where Rob and I, we the same real estate education that we had kind of come up. There was one day or one evening, I guess, during a weeknight, there was like an introductory course. I signed up for a 3-day, basic training course, and that's really where it took off from there. I remember being very skeptical on the Friday of the 3-day course. I was like, oh man, this is hokey. There was an American with a very interesting accent, and I'm like, I don't know about this. And then on the Saturday, I was like, oh, this is starting to make sense. Okay, there's some Canadians here, and they're doing it as well, and they're doing it in this market. And then by Sunday, I was like, I need to do this. I need to, I need to, change my life. I read the many of you guys have probably heard of it. If you haven't, I'd be shocked. But the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki. I remember reading that, and I was actually on vacation when I was reading that book, and I was like, wait, passive income, make money while while you're sleeping, make money while, make money. And I'm, drinking my adult beverage with my feet up by the pool. And I'm like, sounds pretty interesting. I want to do this. So at that point there, I'm kind of fast forward a little bit, but through the education, I had met my now business partner, and the rent to home, rent to own, lease option, that strategy really spoke to me because at the time I was kind of a chicken poop investor, if you will. I was a little nervous. I heard all the horror stories about rental properties and tenants and ruining properties and not collecting rents and all that kind of stuff. So I was very hesitant still, even after all the education, kind of entering that market. So the rent to own strategy really spoke to me because you could help people and they're going to be in the home that they want to own. Who would ruin the house that they're going to own, right? So really went kind of full board, really deep on the rent to own strategy. Got a mentor. The mentor, shout out to Ron, he was great, and Emil, they were fantastic. They had done a whole bunch of rent to own strategies, and I had met my now business partner because he had sent out a deal. We were on email list. We had never actually met in person, but I was on an email list that he had, and he sent out a deal that was exactly what we were learning in the classes. And I had a little bit of capital at the time, a little bit of money. I was able to qualify for some mortgages. I was doing good in the sales jobs that I was doing, so my income was pretty good. And I emailed them back, I think within less than 5 minutes. And I said, hey, I'm interested in this deal. Let's do it. And he replied back even less time. He goes, okay, you're in. You're the investor. And I was like, oh crap. Oh my God. Now what? I emailed my mentor and I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing this deal. Is it good? What else do we need to know? And then as the story goes, we did that deal. And actually it took a little bit longer than we had anticipated. We had to go through a couple more properties than just the first one that the tenant buyer was looking at. And we had kind of realized that we had complementing personalities, and just I was the outgoing talkative sales. He was more of the Excel sheets, and he was an engineer and more analytical from that standpoint. So we said, hey, we can do a bunch of these. So we did 3 or 4 ourselves where we both qualified for financing, had the capital, and then we were capped out. We said, well, you don't have any more money or mortgage. I don't have any more money or mortgage. What do we do? And luckily, obviously, through the education that we had both took, we knew what to do was, other people's money, other people's credit, and we found joint venture partners, investors to partner with, so that we could help more and more. So that was we started that. I guess it was 2013 or so, and then 2014 is when we actually incorporated our company. So just over 8 years now that we've done that. Over 250 rent to home, rent to own properties, 150 successful completions, so that we've actually sold back to our tenant buyers. Now they're proud homeowners. We have about another 95 or so that are currently in operation that they just started or just exiting. We have a team of 7 full-time staff, and then myself and my business partner. So we really turned this into a business. What real estate investing has done for me, for my life, for now my family, my little guy, and my fiance, it's just been incredible. So that's just a little bit of background about me. I'm happy to share anything more or any other questions, but I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
That's awesome. You know what? So much of your story resonates with me because Alan is on. And Alan, feel free to chime in anytime. What you were saying, being the talkative one and working with your partner who's an engineer, that's Alan and I met through the same trainings, and we didn't quite do the same number of rent owns as you've done, but things worked out very well for us, and we focused more a little bit on the multifamily end of things, and more in the East Coast. But when we were doing the rent to owns, we were working mainly in the Ottawa area. That's where we were finding tenants. And but you're absolutely right. Like, just being around those people and your mentors. I had Ron as a mentor. Alan had Emil as a mentor. So it just I'm so happy I got to keep in touch with you over the years, and you've always been very kind with your time, answering calls, answering emails, doling out advice. What part of the business do you focus on predominantly? I think you work more with the investors, right?
Yeah, so we've gone through a few iterations before when it was just the two of us. It'd be all different parts. I'd be, driving the properties, home inspections. But I'd like to say I'm kind of like the conduit to our program, to our solution. So whether that is joint venture partners, whether that is tenant buyers, whether that's referral partners, kind of bringing out that awareness out into the world about what we do, because I've been saying this a lot in the last few months of this specific business, rent to own. It's a business that needs to be explained. It's not something that you can just put up a one pager and somebody will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. That's great. Over time, yeah, it's a lot simpler. I remember the first go around, and I think it was Shelly actually. She was actually training Tim to teach the rent to own course, and it was like drinking water from a fire hose, like upside down on one leg. Like it was, I was like, what? What did I get myself into here? So I definitely had to go review the materials, go back and forth, call my mentors quite often, explaining it, going back and forth. Um, but that's now what I try to do is really try to simplify it as much as possible. If it is a joint venture partner, if it is a tenant buyer, if it's one of our referral partners, like a realtor or a mortgage broker or a real estate professional, just kind of simplifying and explaining it and being that conduit so that people can, oh, okay, great, tell me more. Let me, understand a little bit better, right? So that's my primary goal. Anybody that wants to listen or hear about rent to own, I'm having a conversation, and sometimes even if they don't, I'm still going to explain it to them a little bit. But I get those cues now a little bit more now, where we'll start talking about sports or something like that if they're not
And
interested.
you were, are you still the president of CARA?
Yes, currently, yeah, and actually that's great. We just had our board meeting, our February board meeting yesterday. Yeah, currently sitting as the president of the Canadian Association of Rent-to-Own Professionals, rent-to-own companies across the country, that are implementing this strategy. We're actually planning our summit on April 22nd, so that's going to be in the GTA. So that we're very excited about that, to bring a little bit more, again, more awareness. It's not going to be all rent to own, of course. We're going to have some amazing people speaking at the summit, but that's something that, for me, that's truly a passion that, at a minimum, once a month, I'm sitting, in a meeting with some awesome people that are doing rent to own at a high level across the country, sharing experiences, things that are going on in BC and Alberta and Manitoba and even out east. So that's yes, yeah. So again, long-winded answer. You'll get a lot of those today, Rob. But
That's
yes,
fine. You know what?
currently sitting as the president of CARA, and
I
it's
think
truly
it's
a pleasure.
important that people have an awareness that you're trying to build some consistency in the industry, and bring some credibility, because I think for too long there were a lot of people who were in it for the wrong reasons,
Yep.
and it's important that people see that maybe not policing it, but trying to bring a better standard available, and have an association where people can pose questions from a consumer perspective, and also on how to do it the right way as a professional.
Yep. Yep. No, you said it. That's exactly it. And that's it's the collective of all of our experiences, right? There's always going to, it's not if something happens, and this is real estate in general, right? It's not if, it's just when, and how do you manage it? How do you deal with it? How do you, overcome those obstacles and hurdles, and having a strong network of people. And then obviously with CareUp specifically about rent to own, we talk about different situations, scenarios, whether again with joint venture partners or tenant buyers, right? So that we can lean on each other's experience, not too dissimilar to this community, where you can put out a question and get some help or get some insight, because there's a lot of experience in this, this Zoom room, on Facebook, in the community itself, where you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You know, nobody, real estate's been around a long time, right? Kings and queens in medieval times, right? So I don't know if they were renting to own, like, caves back in the day in caveman time, um, but again, it's working on and helping others, get to their goal quicker, right? To kind of advance that so that they don't need to make the mistakes. They can learn from yours. You're gonna make different and other mistakes, but and finding what the best practices are, right? And seeing that and getting that. So yeah, no, it's an honor to be part of that association. Like I said, we're gearing up for a big event in April. Um, to have the summit and hopefully get some people from across the country into the GTA and yeah, and put on a good show.
How many members do you have now?
I think we're latest count, full members that are full-time operators or at least operating a full-time business. I think we're just north of 40, and then associate members. That could be really anybody: real estate investors, mortgage professionals, realtors. Um, I think the number I think is something like 20, I believe, 15 or 20 or so. So yeah, so just I don't know, around 60 or so across the country. Not too big, but it's very niche, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's a
Good
great way for
morning.
people to get started as well. If a lot of people are getting into the education packages and they don't have the capital to buy real estate themselves, it's a great way to leverage other people's credit, other people's money, and still get into the game and create cash flow for yourself.
Definitely.
Great
Absolutely.
way to control but not own the property. Sorry. Hello, Alfonso. It's so good to see you this morning. I just
Hi,
wanted to
Shelley.
make note that there's a question in the
Oh,
chat. Min has
Oh
asked a
yeah.
question. Maybe if Min wants to open up his mic and ask the question directly, that'd be great. Min, do you want to come in, or he was asking
Well,
about what type of price range and what kind of property do you typically do for rent to own?
yeah. What is the property price range and type and for rent to own? So the property price range, obviously, it's changed since we first started. We were buying single family homes, $150,000, $200,000 in Hamilton, Ontario. So that would be, I'd love to jump in my DeLorean with Doc and Marty McFly and go back to that time, and pick up, as many as I can back then. But these days, primarily working, in Ontario, Southwestern Ontario, but really we work across the province. Price ranges are anywhere from 400,000 all the way up to 700,000. I think we have some outliers where we picked up a couple in the last few months or year, um, in that 300 price range, and I think the highest on record to date was $930,000 for a rent to home. But again, those are outliers. We're more than likely going to be in that $400,000 to $700,000 range. Um, and again, really the price range is determined by the tenant buyer on what they can afford. So just to kind of clarify, and this might be different or the models, but what I learned in all that education and what we still apply is a client first or a tenant buyer first rent to own strategy, where we're finding clients, tenant buyers, qualifying them based on their income, their down payment, their credit score, and then based on those things, then now we have a number: 400, 500, 600,000, and they're going out and looking for that home. So we don't go and buy a property and say, hey, this is a great property, now let's find somebody to rent to own it. We're utilizing the tenant buyer or the client first approach, and then the second, or the type of property, the second part of your question there was the type of property, whether it's a single family home, a condo, a townhome, all of the above. So again, it's really up to the client, the tenant buyer, for them to choose the home. So they'll be provided a budget, a 4 or 5 or 600,000, like I said, and then they go get to choose the home, whether it's a single family home, a townhouse, a condo, a high-rise condo, a townhome condo, a tiny home. I think we're now looking at as well too, as those become more popular. But really, the type of property is going to be chosen by the tenant buyer, because again, it's going to be their home. So we want them to feel confident, feel comfortable that this is a home that they want to live in, that they want to buy, that they want to own for the mid to long term. So I hope that answers your question, Min.
Actually, I have another question for you then. How
Sure.
has the real estate climate impacted the rent own with many areas, including the one that you're in, where you were accustomed to seeing market appreciation like this, and now it's flat, and interest rates
Yeah.
have gone up, which makes it a bit of a challenge for people to make those higher payments and bring that return for your investors.
Yeah. So the first thing that I've been getting that question a lot of, how's the market? And, even from 2 and 3 years ago now, with, the way that the purchase prices went just on a steep incline, throughout the pandemic. And then now as the interest rates have kind of followed the same line, but, in a straight line up in terms of this rate. So the first change is just basically the purchasing power. Everybody, whether that's tenant buyers, whether that's, um, tenant buyers or joint venture partners, investors, everybody's purchasing power has been reduced. If you could afford a $600,000 home, even take rent to own out of the equation for a second, if you could qualify for a $600,000 home, because of the interest rate, you've probably been chopped down to, I don't know, 5 or 550 or something lower, because of the interest rates, and then stress test added on top of that as well too, right? So um, the interest rate itself, again, we were, I guess, stress testing before it was cool, if you will. So anytime that our tenant buyers would enter our program, back in 2014, 2015, 2016, when rates were, kind of where they were now, maybe a little bit lower. But we were always looking at 2 and 3 and 4 years out, because that's typical length of the program, of what the clients are going to be able to qualify for at the end of the program if interest rates were to increase or go up. So the payment, there's the dollar's got to go a little bit farther now. We got to maybe be out of the major city centers, right? Or maybe there's going to be a little bit of a further commute to to the exact city that they want to live in. So yeah, the purchasing power has been reduced. Payments obviously have just gone up because of the interest rate, and what lenders and banks now have as their posted rate, or the rates that they're providing for our investors and for our tenant buyers. So yeah, we've just had this, but the contrast that is, now we were able to negotiate a little bit more with prospective sellers. If sellers have their home on the market and it's listed, they're willing to hear, maybe not, 20 cents on the dollar, but they're able to get a little bit, we're able to get a little bit of a better deal, if you will, negotiate that a little bit further down. So it's funny that, when we started this business, we would see, okay, let's just say the purchase price was 500, maybe we were able to negotiate it down to 450. And then as it went up, the purchase price was 500, and now we saw it selling for 550, and how it kind of goes, up and down and kind of all around. And to the last part of your question about the appreciation, or, what we can predict of what the prices are going to be in the future. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. The closest thing we have is my bald head, but the nobody really knows what the impact is. Obviously, with rates up, prices are going to come down. As prices, as interest rates go back down, prices will come up. But the most important thing of the way that we're setting the future purchase price is, it's based on what the tenant buyer is going to be able to qualify for. We're not just arbitrarily picking a number into the future and saying, oh, we want to sell it for $800,000 because we want to make this type of return, and we want that. It doesn't matter what the client's going to be able to qualify for. We're actually reverse engineering it and looking at what is the client going to be able to qualify for at the end of the program, based on their current income, down payment, credit, and then looking at what the budget is today. So, and then again, we use a very conservative appreciation where it is going to be attainable, and the clients are going to be able to qualify. Banks are going to like that number, and so hopefully that helps, Rob, and answers the question.
Absolutely. And Min had also commented that he's in Vancouver, so prices are higher. Have you done any out there?
None in BC. We have some counterparts. We have some companies that are part of the real estate or the rent to own association in Vancouver, Fraser Valley, kind of Lower Mainland, that type of area. But ourselves personally, we have not worked um, in Vancouver. And then Shelly, yeah, Shelly's mentioning she has friends who do rent to own in Vancouver area, typically their townhouses to keep the prices down. So yeah, again, there if you are kind of like in Vancouver or British Columbia where the prices are typically higher, or GTA, those are probably going to be, I can compare to maybe some that we've done in the GTA where they've been, condos, where, a little bit smaller, the purchase prices are lower, even townhomes. We've done a few in that area, or sorry, that type of property where, yeah, the purchase prices are typically lower than say your average purchase price, single family home with a little bit of land or something like that.
I think Min is interested in getting into rent to own. What's the typical down payment for rent to own? 3 to 5%?
Yeah, you got it. For our program, we require a minimum of a 3% down payment from the tenant buyer. Now, after we look at credit scores and things like that, we might require a little bit more, but typically a minimum of 3%. Again, that's I gotta find a better saying for this, but that skin in the game, right? They're kind of they're anti, I guess, to the game. So yeah, we do require that, and that's the interesting part about rent to own is that there's obviously negative stigmas or there's different things where people are saying, hey, it's this, it's that, or whatever, rent to own. And even from investors that, again, Rob, that we're probably sitting in the same rooms with, and oh, I'll never do rent to own again. The tenant buyer did this and this. The first question that I always ask is, I said, how much did you collect for their initial option consideration, right? Or their down payment. We call it an initial option consideration because it's technically not a down payment because they're not buying the home today, but it's an option consideration or consideration to make it an option. So that's the first question I ask is, how much did you collect? And if they're like, well, first and last month's rent, well, then you have a renter, on your hands, right? That's a renter, not somebody that wants to own their home. So that's typically why we'll collect that 3% or more, because then that gives that little bit more security, a little bit more, what's that word, responsibility to that tenant buyer that, hey, I've given a significant down payment. I remember one time we collected the option consideration. It was at a home inspection with the tenant buyer, and they gave us a certified check for like, I think it was like $45,000. And the gentleman was shaking. Like he was literally shaking. Like I'm pretty sure it wasn't every penny that he had, but he had scraped, earned, saved. Like he had really sacrificed to save this $45,000. And when I looked in his eyes and said, listen, I'm going to give you this back in 3 years from now, and you're going to be using this as a down payment. And he was, he's quite emotional and nervous and scared. But again, I knew he was committed. He wanted to make the program work, and sure enough, it was a success. Him and his family own that home now, geez, probably for a few years, and definitely bought it under market value at the time, and probably enjoyed the increase in the market the last few years. And there's countless stories of that. But that's why that that initial option consideration is so important. First of all, collecting that and collecting it for us, we think a minimum of 3%. But making sure that you are collecting that so that that client is feeling that responsibility, that obligation, that they're not just a renter.
Like we've experienced it in the past, so I'm curious to see how you've managed this in your business. So a lot of people who get into rent to own as a tenant buyer get into rent to own because they have some bad habits financially. How have you managed to get them to turn that around? Because a lot of the times you have people who who have unhealthy financial habits, and it's a difficult thing to get them to flip that switch and change.
Yeah. Well, Yeah, no, it's true. It's how do you make that, the proverbial horse drink the water, right? So we really make that water as sweet and as tasty, as enjoyable as possible. But what we found early on, yeah, it's people get stuck into their habits. It's just like anything, right? We're now, what, 34 days or 35 days into the new year. How many are still on their New Year's resolution that they were supposed to do something every day, right? We're creatures of habits, of the normal things that we're supposed to do. So especially someone that, whether it's their credit or, savings or spending habits, all that kind of stuff, how do we correct that? And we can't, in my opinion, leave that up to their own, leave them on their own to do that, because again, we're just asking for them to repeat the same habits or the same, things that they're accustomed to doing. So very early on in our program, we thought it was is important to provide some type of, assistance or service for these clients, that we could provide them the help. We always said, if you put in the effort, we're going to match it and double it. So we actually have we work with a credit team, the money coaching, financial team that helps these clients on an ongoing basis. So part of our program, we actually have a credit team that works with the clients. We at least 4 times per year, every quarter, have preset meetings. So the tenant buyer is actually scheduled to meet with our credit team to review everything that we talked about at the very beginning of the program, of how they're going to be successful improving their credit, saving up for the down payment, they're making sure they're claiming their income properly. Because not only credit and credit habits, but a lot of small business, self-employed individuals, they can be very creative, let's say, in terms of what they claim they make for their income. So, getting out of that habit to make sure that they're not just doing cash job after cash job after cash job, to make sure that they are claiming that. So, again, they still have to drink the water themselves. Like if I go get a gym membership, I still have to go to the gym. I still have to do, the push-ups and chin-ups and all the workout myself. But we like to think it's almost like a personal trainer where, hey, if I'm going to go to the gym tonight at 8 o'clock, okay, it's 8:30, it's tired, it's cold out, I'll go tomorrow. But if I have an appointment with a personal trainer tonight at 8 o'clock, now I'm impacting somebody else's life. I have to call them, and say, hey, I can't make it. I'm not going to make an excuse. Or they're going to say, why aren't you coming? Let's go. This is why you're paying me. This is why you're here. So we like to think of it almost as a personal trainer for their finance, where, outside of the minimum of the 4 times per year that they're meeting and talking with our team, that they have access to their team all the time. They're walking through, I don't know, a retail store, and they have credit card available, and you get your first purchase when you sign up for a credit card, or other things that they need to, I don't know, plan for. They have access to the team 365, 7 days a week, all throughout the program. And I think that's one positive thing that came through the pandemic was, these types of video calls have become more commonplace. And now our team and our tenant buyers have been able to establish a stronger relationship and feel comfortable picking up the phone, jumping on a video call and saying, hey, you know what, my car broke down, or my car's on its last legs. I need to be planning to buy a new vehicle soon. How should I do it? All right, let's strategize. What is the time frame? What do we need to set aside? Or, hey, you know what, little Johnny, little Susie, they need braces, right? We need to figure something out, a plan around that. So the thing, and it's not perfect by any means. It's we're human beings. People are always going to go and do what, they have their free will and choice of doing what they want to do. However, we want to make it, as simple and as easy and as less friction as possible to get the right advice and guide them. And ultimately they have to make that decision on their own, whether they want to do more cash jobs or save up or fix their credit, pay their bills on time and submit their taxes. They actually have to do it, but we're encouraging them, supporting them, giving them the tools and knowledge so that they can do it in the most efficient way possible. And again, their reward, if you will, is being successful at the end and buying the home, right? So that's making sure that, hey, that's still the goal. If we're not doing these things, you're not going to be able to purchase it and be successful. So.
All right. Anybody have questions? I see one from you, Min, and we'll get to it, but just want to put it out there to everybody else. If you want to ask some questions, it's a great time. we have Alfonso for another 15-ish minutes.
I'd like to ask a
Vince,
question, Alfonso.
Hey, nice to see you, Alan.
Yeah,
Long
you too,
time, man.
Alfonso. Yeah, yeah.
Great. I see you on Facebook in the photos, but nice to see you moving and in human form.
Yeah, real person. Uh, so could you just touch on like what is your, I guess, like what does an ideal client look like for you? Like given like the home prices and you mentioned like 3%, because I still like Rob mentioned earlier, we don't necessarily like focus on rent to owns right now, but I still like to run the numbers and things like that. Especially if I see particular deals that I just want to like kind of underwrite myself. The payments when you're trying to build up, and a lot of the times it's up to a 20% down payment, just given the history.
Yeah.
The home prices, that payment, like we're talking like in excess of like $4,000 or $5,000 a month sometimes. So what does your client look like who can afford those payments? And like, how do you market to that kind of specific segment?
Yeah, great question. And I could definitely tell the experience that you have in this, right? With those types of questions. So really, it boils down to the two things that we always say that when we're going to look at. So again, for our ideal client, we've had, clients, newlyweds that are in their early 20s. We've had, a little bit more experienced clients, let's say, that are in, the twilight years, late 50s, early 60s. So in terms of like a demographic, it is wide ranging in terms of the type of client. But the two main things that we always go back to is income and down payment, or initial option consideration. So really it's a breakdown of the income. So we use similar as a bank would look at, the qualifying, we'd use a similar type, multiple of their income, right? So to make sure that they can afford it, and really bringing in the debt, TDS and GDS into the equation, right? Their total debt service and their gross debt service, understanding, what their full financial picture. Because number one, how are they going to be able to make that monthly payment? Like you said, sometimes in excess of $4,000 or $5,000 per month. How much are they making each month? What are their other obligations that they have, whether it's debt or credit cards, things like that that they're servicing? So that's the exact intricacies. And Rob, you're right. I can tell this is the engineering ones and zeros type questions, right, from Alan. I'll be honest, I leave that up to our credit team because they're the ones that are looking at the credit, the details of the credit, the affordability. So a client might say, "Hey, I want to buy a $600,000 home." Great, but based on your income, based on what you have as a down payment, we can only qualify you for, I don't know, $450,000 or $500,000 home. So sometimes their wants, needs, desires don't match up with what we're actually qualifying for. And this is the one thing that if I can, impart on anybody listening here or that's listening in the future, is our rent-to-home program, JAG specifically, is not that, hey, I went to the bank, I was qualified for 500, I want to buy 600. So I'm going to do a rent to own. There's a reason why the bank qualified you for $500,000. It's because that's what you can afford. That's what you can pay, and that's what you can make. Any other company that will say, "Oh, great, the bank said 5, no worries, we'll buy you 6. Hey, have you thought about 7?" That's where the negative stories or the setup for failure, that's where that happens. Because literally today, I'm a big Formula One fan, and Ferrari's my team, and I love the Ferrari sports cars, all that kind of stuff. I could walk into a Ferrari dealership today and they could set me up with the Ferrari, and I could probably make, 2, 3, 4 months of payments. But after that, I'm not going to be able to keep up on those payments. And, there's going to be Dog the Bounty Hunter or, some repo man that's going to come and take my Ferrari because I'm not going to be able to make up with those payments. We do not want to put our clients in that situation where they're not going to be able to make those payments. So sometimes those are tough conversations, realistic conversations to say, hey, you know what, for that $600,000 or $700,000 home that you really want, you're going to have to pay $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. And you've just sent us all your financial information, your income, your tax returns, all your debts. And we know you're not going to be able to afford that. So we don't even want to start that program with you unless you have those realistic expectations. So unfortunately, it is sometimes, hey, we're gonna have to look at a lower purchase price, or like I said, maybe extend out the search area for, 20, 30, 50, kilometers, so that we can, still be where you need to work and live and all that kind of stuff. But we're really, really disciplined in terms of, hey, these are the numbers and this is what you're able to afford and what you're able to pay. And we can't go more than that, because we only win if the tenant buyer wins, our joint venture partner wins. And if we're not setting that up to win right from the beginning, it's just more headaches and issues right from the start. And we don't need more of those. Nobody needs more of those. So does that help, Alan? I hope that answers the
Yeah,
question.
that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, thank you. And like, I just want to say, just to follow up on what Rob was asking earlier, or mentioning earlier, for anyone who's kind of newer in investing, I don't think there's a better strategy to start with than lease options rent to own, for like a number of reasons. You won't get a strategy that teaches you more about like managing tenants, finding money partners, if that's another goal for you, learning about credit. You will be a credit expert after like learning and going through like a couple of rent owns, and what lenders and mortgage brokers and banks look for qualifying mortgages. You will be an expert on that. So just to learn all these things that you can carry over into multifamily, into BRRRR strategy, into any kind of strategy, it's like super foundational. So I mean, like that's the biggest thing from I think what me and Rob had worked on earlier. We don't focus on it, but a lot of those skills, a lot of those relationships, a lot of everything we know came from that as setting a foundation. So yeah, awesome strategy. And it's awesome to see like you're just crushing it in that strategy, Alfonso.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't consider myself a credit expert, but my own credit has improved, and I'm more knowledgeable about it. I'm able to speak about it because, and I don't want to talk bad about the banks and lenders. They're fine. They serve their purpose. However, they're not set up to educate and train people on their credit. They're just looking at it as a deciding factor whether they're going to loan their money or not. That's it, plain and simple. So I'll challenge everybody on the call, and everybody that's listening. Number one, find out your credit score. There's so many different apps and programs now on your phone to learn what your own credit score is. But more importantly, Google, how is my credit score made up of? Make sure it's a Canadian website, but what are the 5 factors of credit? So those are so, yeah, they're perfect. Borrowell, Credit Karma, and learn what those 5 factors are of credit, because it's incredible the conversations that I have on a daily basis with people about credit, and they think they know, oh, well, I don't make much money, so my credit's not good. Or, hey, you know what? I had I paid my Visa late, or a phone bill, and how it can impact your credit. Just that knowledge, you're going to become a better real estate investor knowing those things, because it's thinking how the bank thinks, right? Of understanding that and learning those factors of your credit, will definitely serve you well, for sure.
Well, Alfonso, I have to admit, I'm a little disappointed in you. I
Okay.
thought you were successful enough to carry that Ferrari by now.
Oh boy. Well, at this, you know what? Life, when we met, Rob, I was supposed to be retired by 30 and own at least one Ferrari. But that's, I guess, when I was in my early 20s and I knew everything at that point. But now priorities have changed. It'll be long before I can buy a Ferrari. It'll be a lot more things for my family, my son. I probably buy my son a Ferrari before I buy myself one now.
Doesn't he have one of those little ones, the battery operated ones he can
I
drive?
do. I definitely do. I'll pull up the picture. I'll share it with the group if anybody's interested. But that was
I
for
want to
his
see
first.
him riding it in front of your house.
Yeah, absolutely. For his first birthday, that was his gift. Was a little. Yeah, that was only like a few $100, not a few 100,000. So, but yeah, and
He
and
still has a better car than I do.
yeah, me too.
Oh my gosh. Let's see.
Oh yeah, I'm
Ben
looking at
has
the chat.
another question if you want to just take a peek in the chat.
Yeah, I just opened up the chat here. So yeah, the typical down payment. How to find owners who are willing to do rent to own expired listings? Yeah, and Shelly answered that question. Yeah, existing landlords. Like I said, we primarily don't focus on a property first strategy, but Shelley's answer, finding existing landlords is a great opportunity. People that are, the tired landlord, or, again, inevitably have issues with their tenants, or are not cash flowing, or are just tired of managing, right? And yeah, the other comment there on aged or expired listings could be a good way, especially, especially in this market situation here. So, and then Min asked, how much you charge for each rent to own deal? 10,000, owner pay for it. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can clarify that question a little bit, how much we charge for each rent to own. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by
I think
that. Like,
he means how much money do you make?
oh, so okay, so for our traditional setup is that we are equal partners with our joint venture partners. So if the property cash flows, let's say $1,000 a month, our joint venture partner will make 500 and we make 500. If there's the total profit of the deal is, say, I don't know, $60,000, $70,000, then each partner, a Jag Properties, our joint venture partner, we would make that $35,000 on an even split. So we're not, our model is not, here's a great deal, I'm just going to sell it to you, good luck. We're a true partnership where we're taking care of the management, the property, the client, the facilitation, the purchase, the exit of the property, the sellback of the home. Excuse me, we're a true partner throughout the program. It's not like here's a deal and here I'll charge you $5, $10, $20,000 for it and good luck. I hope it works out. We're a true partner throughout the program with in our model.
Does that answer you, Min? So we have time for one more question. If anybody else has a question. Oh, there, Lucas has one. How do you find your JV partners?
Yeah, like I said, I besides getting tattooed rent to own on my forehead, the conversations, networking events, every opportunity possible, right? Yeah, like groups like this, other networking groups, getting, we're part of several different Chamber of Commerce groups from different cities, networking. I'll be honest, I know the pandemic affected everybody, but that was the hardest thing for me was, not going out and being able to shake hands, meet people. These groups are great. However, you guys are there and it's a one-way conversation. You guys are listening to me, asking the questions, great, and answering those questions. However, for the most part, we've all experienced one experience today. Rob asking a couple of questions, me answering these questions. If this group was, say, at a hotel conference center or something like that, we would have multiple different experiences because Andrew would talk to Lucas and Min would talk to Kyle and Alan would talk to Shelley and well, everybody would have their iPhone because iPhone is here, but we would all have multiple different experiences and conversations and little tidbits. So if that's one thing that I can emphasize, getting out, networking, sharing with people. And I used to say, make every conversation about what you do. I'll warn you with that is that I used to talk to everybody. It's like I'm almost like word vomit on everybody about what I do and explain that. Now, when somebody asks, hey, what do you do? Or you start with a question, hey, what do you do? Oh, that's, what do you do for work? And then inevitably they're going to ask, hey, what do you do? And today my answer is we help people get into home ownership and help people invest into real estate that don't want to manage rental properties. And I leave it at that. And then they'll follow up. They'll ask, well, how do you do that? And it's essentially them giving you permission to share that information. So I'll be honest, at gas stations, I used to, be filling up my truck and I used to see someone at the next pump and be like, hey, how's it going? Can I tell you what I do? And I wish I had the body cam or the GoPro of seeing their reactions where that's a sure way of getting people to not talk to you, is to kind of off-putting, but being, hey, how's it going? Oh, hey, that's great. Or finding some commonality, starting those conversations, whether it's at workplaces, common or networking events out in the mall, in a shopping line at Walmart. So and now I'm working on my son to learn about to say, do you want to learn about ROI, or hey, do you want to invest in real estate, right? So he'll be the one that starts the conversation. But really, there is not one surefire way, but being out there, putting yourself out there, letting people know what you do, what you're planning on doing. Again, another investor shared this with me, was putting together, and I know with Rob and the team there at Thrive, you guys are analyzing deals, looking at deals, putting together an actual pro forma of a deal and saying, hey, you know what, I want to do a rent to own, I want to do a flip, I want to do a multifamily, I want to do a BRRRR. Put together a pro forma based on a property that is listed, or a realistic property that you've analyzed numbers on. Make it a nice presentation, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages, whatever that is, PowerPoint, and then send that out to your existing network of people and saying, hey, just want to get your opinion on this. What do you think about this? Would this be something that, what am I missing? Can I get your thoughts on, if you would invest in something like this? Not that I'm asking you to invest, but let me just get your thoughts on this, right? So that would be a good way, because they'd be like, wait, who's the partner here? Who's investing on this? Wait, this sounds great. So from a low, I'm really gone down. Like I said to you, I did door-to-door sales. I had to be really pushy. I had like 30 seconds to a minute, almost like TikTok now, but I had 30 seconds to a minute to, capture that person's, attention. Now I'm taking a little bit of a, laid back approach, or not as aggressive approach, if you will, to say, hey, this is what we do. This is what we've done. This is what we're looking to continue to do. And this is how we do it. If you want to learn more, let's chat. If you're not interested, no problem. Hey, let's talk about the game last night, or something like that, right? So having that approach, having those conversations, making those connections, because you don't know 8 years later, where you're going to be and what you're doing. So having that conversation, it's not going to be instant. Someone is going to remember, that you mentioned this, that you're doing that, and sharing that, and they'll reach out to you at some point. So that's the best advice I can give for that. I hope that helps, Lucas.
Hey, Alfonso, a couple of things. I didn't do the telephones. I did picture frames.
Oh, wow. Okay. I could just imagine.
Much tougher sale.
I can imagine. Picture yourself owning
Oh
this
my
frame.
God. And then also during the pandemic, I'll tell you, that was probably the most difficult time of my life, living, especially where I live, not being able to get out and see people. And I, when I get out in groups, or I speak to people on these Zoom calls, I can't stress enough the importance of getting out and actually meeting people. Go for a coffee with them, go to a networking event, and be interested in them. It shouldn't be just all about you. Go out and meet people, shake their hand, look them in the eye, get a sense of who they are, let them have a sense of who you are, because as great as Zoom is, and I use them a lot, it's nothing like meeting people in person, face to face. And I so missed that for about 2 years, being able to see people and meet people. And now I'm in a position again where I'm trying to stay away from larger groups for a little while. But I'm just aching to get back and see people, like, relationships matter. And I like to surround myself with people I like and care about, right? And a few of you are on this call right now, and you and I met a long time ago, and we don't speak often, but just going back to when we first met and being able to remember having that personal connection that was made by sitting down next to a stranger and just striking up a conversation and keeping in touch, but also following one another and seeing progress. It means a lot. So get out and meet people. Don't Don't sit at your desk and expect your business to grow. Get out there, meet people, build relationships. People will have a lot more confidence and trust in you. And the other thing is, don't be afraid to say, I don't know, let me get back to you, right? You're going to build a lot more confidence with people by saying that than trying to wing it or fake it or lie, because you will burn yourself. Be honest with people. So.
Got it. Great advice, Rob.
All right. On that note, I'm going to let Alfonso get back to his little one and his fiance. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Appreciate
And
it. Thank you guys.
we'll try to get on a call this week to work out timing.
Okay.
And give everybody an opportunity to spend an extended period of time with you learning about rent to own and building their business. But thanks again.
Awesome. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.